Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask HR. I'm your host, Chris Timmel, and I'm here with my very good friend, HR enthusiast extraordinaire, Brianna Grimes. Brianna, how are you?
Hello, I'm very good. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am very, very excited to answer some HR questions today.
All right, well, let's roll. Marion in Montana asks, we just received an EEOC complaint. What do we do now?
That's a great question. Yeah, EEOC complaints are something that a lot of people struggle with because they don't happen that often, and a lot of the times when the company get hit with them, it's really, I don't say complicated, but they don't always know what to do, right? If it's not something you deal with every day, it's kind of a new experience. So first, I want to kind of dive a little bit into what is an EEOC complaint. So the EEOC is a governing body at the federal level that really protects employees for different reasons. So they are the ones that created the list of all of the protected classes. And so the EEOC oversees all of that aspect of employment. So things like protected classes might be race or age or military status and things like that. So an EEOC complaint is when an employee can go to the EEOC, usually via a website form, and they can file a complaint against their employer because they feel that they were discriminated against or unfairly treated in their labor practices. And so this complaint is something that a client or an employer would receive from the EEOC stating as a courtesy, hey, we have received this complaint from your employee. With that complaint, what comes in it is typically a statement or a position statement from the employee on what exactly they're claiming. And so there's a couple of different kind of things that branch off from this point. So the first and foremost, as far as the what do we do now question, if you have an attorney on retention or you have a legal counselor or someone that you work with, definitely bring it to their attention. If you don't have any legal resource on retainer, bring it to whoever handles your internal HR matters because they will need to be the point of contact for the communications and the process going forward. The main thing here is to restrict access to a very small need to know group of people. So typically if there's a manager involved in it or an HR person, probably a senior level manager would need to know. And really that's kind of it. So you want to keep it to a very small group of people and really make sure that they understand that you cannot retaliate against employees for filing these complaints. So not just actual retaliation, but perceived retaliation as well. So you really have to tread carefully in terms of during this process, be very aware and intentional of what's going on in that employee's immediate environment with this if you have it. So you need to kind of decide on how you want to move forward. There is an option to mediate with the employee via the EEOC or to investigate internally and provide your findings to the EEOC. Essentially, what the EEOC is doing after they notify you of this complaint is they're asking you to, for lack of better terms, defend your position. They're saying, this is what the employee is claiming. What do you have to say for yourself? So they're kind of giving you the opportunity to provide documentation, to do an internal investigation, and basically giving you the courtesy of, hey, what's going on? Once you do that, when you do your internal investigation and provide that documentation to the EEOC, essentially what the EEOC does is they decide if they are going to take this complaint and if they are going to try it. So basically, is it going to be under the legal guidelines of the EEOC? Are they going to be the ones who make the decision as if it was kind of a judge situation, right? If you were in court. If the EEOC says, hey, we don't really see that there's enough here, we're going to deny the complaint of the employee, but they might issue something called a right to sue letter, which means that the EEOC is not going to handle the complaint directly and internally, but they're giving the employee the right to go seek outside legal counsel to sue the company. So that's why the investigation piece and deciding if you want to mediate or do an internal investigation is so important because how you investigate, the documentation that you provide is really going to be important to the EEOC making their decision. So doing a thorough investigation, making sure it's impartial, interviewing witnesses, and just making sure that you have any documentation already in their file provided to the EEOC as well will help them make that decision. And then you can go from there based on whether the EEOC denies the claim and says, no, we're going to issue a right to sue, or if they say, yeah, we're going to move forward with our process, and then they'll give you instructions on what's going to happen next. Typically in either of those situations, whether the EEOC denies it and issues a right to sue or not, you are going to want to probably have legal counsel at that point in time, especially if it's your first EEOC complaint.
Sounds very simple.
It's very, I would say it's straightforward. I don't know if simple is the right word for it. It is a very straightforward process. The EEOC is very transparent. You can call their offices and ask questions if you have questions. They're a neutral party, right? If they're not on the employee side, they're not on the employer side. They're really acting as kind of a intermediary, it almost like a whistleblower hotline type of deal where you can reach out to this third party and they really have no vested interest in, supporting either the employee or the employer. So they're very straightforward. They have a very defined process. You can go to their website and look up all of, their processes and their resources and things. They have resources for employees and resources for employers. So they try to be very, very neutral. But it's a great resource, and the process itself can be very, it can give a lot of employers anxiety, right? Because you are dealing with a federal entity, you're dealing with legal stuff now. So it can be a little bit of a stressful process. And there's a lot of detail that goes into it. There's a lot of documentation that goes into it. And for a new HR person, this might be very, very intimidating. But there are a lot of resources online. Like I said, the EEOC is very friendly and they're very helpful in terms of supporting an employer to provide the documentation that they need so they can come to a decision.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Brianna. We appreciate you. And we will see you all in our next episode.